narrative that, like, as a layperson, people are used to hearing is we would go for the climate transition if not for the political impediments and the technological impediments. Now that we're actually talking about execution, has how much has the narrative changed? How much has the reality changed on the ground? Like, how much do we need to update people about what the impediments are now and what actually is happening right now when it comes to the climate transition in the States?
Yeah, I think people talk a lot about this sort of 30,000 foot level stuff on climate. When I think what the most people want, as Emery Levin said a long time ago, is cold beer. They don't want an energy efficient refrigerator. They want a refrigerator that actually keeps their beer cold. And we have a lot of technologies that do that really efficiently today. And so, for instance, 6% of all American households have a backup generator. 4% of all American households have solar plus battery storage. A lot of people are choosing solar plus battery storage today because a generator has no payback. You just pay and pay and pay and pay. Where a solar system, like with a battery, actually has a payback. Now, it may be a slightly longer than you would want. Maybe you want a 4-year payback and it's an 8-year payback. But a generator is just you put $9,000 out, then you put $500 out a year every single year to have it inspected. And if you ever use it, you have to like refill the diesel or pay for the natural gas. So in general, the solutions that we're talking about here that happen to be climate solutions are just better for your life, right? I love the fact that I can recharge my electric vehicle at home. I don't need to go to a gas station. And so that's awesome, right? Now, so there's a lot of people who do these things not because it's for the climate or it's because of reducing their carbon footprint. They're doing this because these are vastly superior technologies. You know, today you've got smart water heaters where if you go on vacation, you can push a button on an app on your phone to put it into vacation mode. So you're not keeping water hot while you're on vacation. That's cool. And then it happens to be that that same feature lets you participate in what we call a virtual power plant, where now you can let the utility choose to control your water heater and they pay you a lot of money every month to do that, right? And so if you want to get access to that money, you can opt in now that you have this app. And so do I want everyone to get super wonky on virtual power plants? No, but if you want to get paid $10 a month, you can hit a button on your app.
One of the members of the Progress Network is Jason Bordoff, who had been an energy advisor in the Obama administration, runs an energy institute. And one of his points is that the either or between renewables versus carbon fuels, right, is a false dichotomy given the world that we're living in, right? We're not going to really decarbonize in the next 20 years globally. We may increase the amount of renewables that are part of the mix, but we're also going to have lots of the world that needs to use the coal they have or the oil they have because there's no current alternative, even if there's a long-term alternative. What do you say about this sort of the mix between pragmatism and idealism around these questions?
So it is obviously true that there's a lot of people who currently own vehicles that burn gasoline. And so they expect to have gasoline at the gas pump when they go there to fill it up. That's obviously true. There's also a lot of people who obviously have a natural gas heating system that they expect to have natural gas flowing through those pipes to actually make sure that they can be heated in the winter. But it's also the case that this pragmatism that has this thing where it's like, well, things happen on their own time frame is patently false. This is why we're in the mess that we're in today. We should have been working harder on this 13 years ago, but we didn't. We had this crazy pragmatism. Now we're intentionally figuring things out. For instance, my office is at the center of getting the best nuclear designs in the world into the marketplace. We forgot to do that for the last 13 years. So now we're 13 years behind. We're there now. We are going to build 200 gigawatts of nuclear power in this country, and we're going to export it around the world to help people get off of coal. I wish we would have done it 13 years ago, but the people that were there 13 years ago didn't want to do it. Well, we're doing it now. The same thing's true for clean hydrogen. The same thing's true for, like next generation transmission. Like we have the best technology in the world. It is superior to what we're using now. And we should be dominating by installing those technologies here in this country. And then we should be exporting it to our allies around the world to help them decarbonize their countries. I do think that some of this excessive pragmatism stuff goes too far. People are like, Well, I don't know. They have coal. They should burn it. Really? They have coal. They should burn it? Yeah. We didn't run out of stones when we got out of the Stone Age. Like, people just found a superior product to like roll things around on. We have superior products. We should introduce them to people who burn coal and say, you should burn this instead, right? Like, you should use uranium instead of using coal. And we've done that now. Poland is replicating the AP1000 in Poland. They're also deciding to use the BWRX 300 from General Electric, which is a US technology, for their next phase.
Introducing the Westinghouse AP300 Small Modular Reactor, the only SMR based on a deployed, operating, and advanced nuclear reactor.
I just think that some of that thinking is patently lazy. We have extraordinary technology and we need to be more muscular on commercializing it.
I mean, I think the question that comes from that is, we're doing this now. We should have been doing this 13 years ago, as you're saying. We're finally doing this now. What happens if there's a federal administration turnover? Do we just stop doing it? Or is it like the money is out there, the tech is out there, it's kind of sort of baked into the system?
Yeah, it's a false argument, right? When you look at the Trump administration, they didn't roll back almost anything. Right. And so the notion, like, it's not like they stopped all the solar and wind tax credits. They didn't figure out a way to ban solar power on people's homes or electric vehicles or, battery manufacturing, right? All of those things kept going. Why? Because Americans are amazing at it. And guess what? There are lots of Republicans who invest in these technologies too. One of the largest investors in battery chemistries in the country right now are the Koch brothers. I just think that in general, like, there's a lot of these political articles and podcasts and other things that come out. But when you look at the underlying investment, some of the largest investors in carbon sequestration and storage technologies are the oil and gas industry. They don't want that to go away. Some of the largest investors in battery technologies are large Republican donors. And so most of the factories that are being announced today are being announced in districts that have elected Republicans, right? And those folks are at the ribbon cuttings and they want those jobs to be created. So I get the rhetoric, and I'm not turning that sound off. Like, I understand it, I hear it. But when you look at what we really want to do as Americans, is we want to have our technology commercialized here. For decades, we sent it to China on purpose for them to commercialize it. I think there's bipartisan support not to have it commercialized there, but instead to commercialize it here by tying it to the American worker.
It's also true under the Trump administration. While the rhetoric was drill, baby, drill, and deregulate some of the rules around offshore drilling for oil, there wasn't really an appreciable change in the amount of drilling because there wasn't really an economic incentive to do so. So there was the kind of the rhetoric of it, right, which was seized on as proof positive. But as you point out, on the solar side, it was also true on the carbon side. The coal industry kept shrinking and the oil industry didn't drill as much because there was no good reason for it, right? These were not competitive sources of energy, even in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think just to reinforce your point, I mean, there were proactive steps that they took to try to support the coal industry, and the industrial consumers didn't want it because they said, we don't want to pay higher prices for electricity. And so, like, we don't want you to make those changes. So I just think that progress is happening, and it's happening in ways that I think people are just not fathoming. I'll give you an example. There's this obscure organization, which is super important, called ASTM, and they basically set the standards for things like cement. For years, they resisted changing the cement standard away from just Portland cement. They just changed the standard to allow for all these more innovative cement formulations to be legal and to get out there. And we have the best technologies in the world to do that. In order to change that standard, all 160 members of that committee have to unanimously agree to the new standard. And they just did. And so, like, it is extraordinary to me how much progress we're making on clean steel, clean cement, clean chemicals, all these places. It's hard to see because some of these obscure, groups are the ones who control whether you can do it or not. But it's extraordinary to see how much progress we're making.